service, some of the women of the church made food after the service. The bishop conducted the service. I mean, they didn't have to do all this, and yet they did. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Free of charge, free of obligation, just jumping right in to help. And I am eternally grateful for that. So it was rough doing that. And then speaking about how to put together a funeral. You have to come up with, basically it's like putting together a show. It's like show prep. You got to put together songs. You got to put together who's going to speak here. What's this going to do? What's that going to do? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? You know what? I'm grateful for the experience because it kept me busy. It kept my mind going because my mind goes 1,000,000 miles a minute and usually into a fucking tree. And that funeral helped me focus, concentrate, get shit done, and put my energy to better use. So then meeting with the mortuary. Now that's another ball of wax. We met with the cemetery, and we were transferred a plot, thankfully, because plots are expensive. They're like thousands. We were transferred a plot, and then we were just given the burial costs. Then we go to the mortuary. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. That's a whole nother can of worms. These are all of the dressings that you do. This is the casket. This is the things you don't even think about for the service. The things that you always see at services and don't give a second thought. Every single thing is planned. If you've never had to plan a funeral, every single thing is planned, right down to the most minute detail. There was a question about open or closed casket. We didn't know. I figured closed because she'd been through a hell of a lot these past few months. Then there was the question of a viewing. Who wants to view somebody? Now that was another thing that I'll get to in a minute, but back to the mortuary. So there were questions about embalming. There were questions about this and that, different things. And just a real quick, here's a note to Mr. Guy Shea, DJ Bad Guy Nation. Thank you for tuning in. One of my favorites here on Spreaker.com. This guy says, is it inappropriate time to say Cavs in 7? Yes, it is, because it's going to be the Warriors in 4, Chief. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. It's going to be the Warriors in 4. And if you don't think that's a reality, I got 2 words for you. Too bad. Warriors in 4. They're just a juggernaut. It's not LeBron's fault. The Warriors are just fucking supreme. That's all it is. Warriors are the best team that's ever come out of the world. They're like fucking Team USA basketball. They're fucking incredible. Cavs haven't got a shot in hell. But back to the funeral. So you go to the mortuary, and they have, all of these different details. And the embalming was like, embalming. Wow, okay, so she's going to be embalmed, which means we're going to have an open casket. And then I found out we're going to have a viewing. And of course I was asked, are you going to have a viewing? I said, I guess, because it's part of the religious rite of the church is to have a small viewing, with a small group of people before the service, friends and family. And so I get there at the mortuary. I'm sitting with my dad. We're going over these different details. What color should the casket be? What about the casket spray? There's a floral piece called a casket spray. That's what that thing at the head of the casket is. It's called a casket spray. And then there's different packages for pictures. There's different packages for programs. There's different packages for guest books and signings. And oh my God. And all of it is so expensive. But that's what's necessary. So we handled it. Family came together and we took care of business. That's how it works. So, coming to the day of the funeral, I get there about 8 o'clock, funeral starts at 10. I walk into the church. I start setting up. I start setting up tables. I start setting up remembrances, posters. My lovely wife got 2 posters made of my mom, which were beautiful. And did work on a 3rd poster, which was awesome as well. Showcased a lot of her craft work. And then we had these seeds. My wife came up with this idea to plant or to have remembrance seeds in bags that had I'm sorry, lost my train of thought there. I have trouble doing that. That have seeds in them so that you can plant flowers in remembrance of the deceased, which is a great idea. My wife is great with that stuff. I'm not. I'm great with like dollars and cents and concrete details. And my wife is great with what's going to be cool. And that was really super cool. So my wife does deserve all the credit for that portion. So, day of the funeral, I'm setting up. And then body comes in. Body comes in, man. Oh, there's the casket. And then shit got real. I mean, it was like, okay, so here's the casket. I started feeling a little palpitation in my heart, just like, whoa, what's going on here? And then they moved the casket into the viewing room. And then they opened the casket. And then shit's really real. There's my mom. I'm like, fuck. Ugh. I mean, like, I got choked up for like the first time because I've been working so hard on the funeral. First time in 13 damn days since she died, I get choked up by looking at her. And she looks wonderful. I don't know what it is about embalmers. I don't know what they do. I read up on it. Embalmers are wonderful. They have to be surgeons, anatomists, yet they have to have this delicate art. They have to be makeup artists. They have to be, as I said before, surgeons because they're sewing up wounds. They have to be chemists. They have to know their shit. And Mom looked as good or better than she has in months. I hate to say that, but she did. And it gave me a little bit of comfort. It gave me a little bit of comfort to know that she was looking good and she was in whatever you believe. I believe that we have a soul and I believe in a God because this shit's too random. Life is too fucking random. Life is too 1 in a billion to ever exist for me not to believe that there is some kind of master scientist behind it. There has to be. And my mother had a tremendous soul. She was so giving of herself. My friends who I will lovingly refer to as the knuckleheads, showed up to pay their respects to who they called their mom. People from work, whom she'd been years retired and removed from, showed up. People from out of town showed up. People from all over Facebook and all over every walk of life sent their regards. My mother was well loved, and I think she would have really liked that. And with my mother's body laying there, the funeral director decides to try and position the body so it's in a more appropriate kind of, I guess you could say, position for closing the casket. And he's trying to cross her arms. And I'll never forget when he was crossing her hands, how weird that looked. There was no life in her hands, of course, because she'd been dead like 13 days. But to see her face in such serenity and see him moving these stiff pair of hands, a surreal moment for sure. Absolutely surreal. So then comes the time to pray. And family members are coming in. People from her life are walking into what's supposed to be this small, intimate gathering of family, but she touched so many people that we filled the whole damn room with people. And the bishop looked at me and I looked at the bishop and I said, you know what? This woman was loved. We can't just restrict this right because this woman was loved. So we allowed anybody who wanted to see her to see her. There were tears. There was shaking, sobbing, crying. Who was the one who didn't cry? Me. Because I had to give a prayer. I had to finish the shit off. I had planned all this stuff. I gotta come through. I had spent 8 hours the night before on her eulogy. 8 hours. And I'm a pretty damn good writer. Yet I had to make sure that eulogy was just right. And that she was remembered to what I felt was proper. I gave the prayer at the burial, or I gave the prayer at the viewing. People were crying. My daughters were crying. 7 and 4 were crying. My aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, all just bawling. And who's not crying? I'm not crying. Why am I not crying? Why am I not just losing my shit? Because I got shit to do. So, pallbearers walk her out. And, it's funny. The screen just kind of shook. I believe in the paranormal, and that would be really funny if, there was some kind of signal that went through just now. She's probably not going to be very happy that I'm using curse words, but, fuck it. So we walk into the chapel. I take a seat right in front of my mom, first row, with my dad. He's doing okay, but fairly inconsolable. Have a great service. I deliver the eulogy. People seem to like it. They all asked for copies. People just kept coming up to me saying it was a great eulogy. And then we go to the cemetery. And this is something that is fairly interesting. They have the gravesite set up with the tarp and everything else, and they load the casket. I mean, this is all a business, and this is all done. I mean, they do this all day, every day, and they just have it down to a science. They're taking the casket up, they're putting it in this enclosure, and there's a crypt involved, and it just all comes together. I'm amazed at the consistency and the efficiency of these people to put a burial together. It's not like 4 guys digging a hole. So they get her up there, and there's more crying, and there's more speaking. And then there's the moment where it becomes, and this is what really bothered me. This is out of all of it, out of my mom dying, out of the lack of fairness to my kids. They're not going to see their grandchild, or they're not going to see their grandmother. Just out of everything. The extensive cost of the funeral, the worries of putting things together, the one of the most bothering things to me was after all was said and done, and nobody wanted to leave, was when they ran a backhoe up the hill and they just started filling her grave in. And that kind of gave it a real moment of, oh shit, this is life, This is life. My mother, who was so alive and so loved her so loved her grandkids, and so loved living and made wonderful things with her hands, and was such a nice